Well guys, we finally made it to Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. I actually did watch both cuts of the movie, and this review will mainly focus on the producer's cut because that's the original cut of the movie, and then at the end I'll talk about the theatrical version, some of the changes that were made, and which one I think is better. But before we get into the review, it would really help me out if you subscribed if you're not already, and turned on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. At the end of Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, Michael was momentarily imprisoned before being broken out in an absolute bloodbath by the mysterious Man in Black. It was an ending left pretty wide open, and while Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, was able to almost triple its budget with its returns, Halloween 5 barely managed to double its own, and because of that, fans had to wait 6 years for the Thorn trilogy's conclusion. This movie was released in 1995, which means I was only 2 years old when it came out, and it was directed by Joe Chappelle. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers is one of the most bizarre entries in the entire franchise. It begins with Jamie in the middle of giving birth. The Halloween wiki says she was born in 1980, so this would only make her 15 years old, which is pretty gross if you ask me. After Jamie has her baby, a midwife helps her escape, but not before Michael drives her head into a spike, and I gotta say, it's a pretty cool kill. Unfortunately though, the mask is still terrible in this movie, but I guess it's par for the course at this point. The hair is shooting out all over the place, and it makes him look like Marv after he gets electrocuted in Home Alone 2. After Michael kills the midwife, he does the head tilt thing from the original Halloween, but at this point he's almost a parody of himself. I understand that it's a callback to the original, but it's done with zero class or nuance. It just straight up sucks. After that, we're introduced to two of the movie's main characters, Danny and Cara Strode. Danny wakes up because the Man in Black appears in his room and tries to convince him to start killing people just like Michael did. Cara gets Danny to fall back asleep and heads back into her room, where we're introduced to the movie's third main character, teenage Tommy Doyle, who's played by none other than Paul Rudd. He is so lucky that Clueless came out in July before this movie was released in September, because his performance sucks. Cara catches him watching her get ready for bed, and it's just creepy, man. When he gets caught, he doesn't even look away from her, and without skipping a beat, he calls into the local radio show to remind the audience who he is. Next, the movie jump cuts again, and we're reintroduced to Dr. Loomis, who has finally retired in the 6 years since Michael's disappearance. And you know what? He finally looks happy, and it's kind of awesome to see that. His old buddy, Dr. Wynn, shows up for a visit. Yeah, you remember this guy, right? He's from the original Halloween. Anyways, he tells Dr. Loomis that he's retiring as the chief administrator of Smith's Grove, and that he wants Loomis to come back and take over for him. It's kind of weird because Loomis is pretty old at this point, and he looks even older than Dr. Wynn in my opinion. I know it's not too far-fetched that Dr. Wynn would want one of his old colleagues to take over for him, but he has to know about all the insane shit that Loomis has been up to for the past few decades. I mean, at this point, it's only been 6 years since he used a little girl as bait to trap Michael Myers. I guess it could be seen as a little bit of clever foreshadowing for what happens at the end of the producer's cut, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. While all of this is happening, Jamie is able to hide in a bus station and call into a radio show to tell the people of Haddonfield that Michael Myers is returning, but the douchebag host is not having it. Thankfully, Loomis happens to have the radio show on, and he springs back into action for what we now know to be Donald Pleasance's final performance as the character. Michael catches up to Jamie and stabs her, but it turns out at the last second that she left the baby in the bus station, and with that, the hunt is on. Between this movie, Halloween 4, and Halloween 5, I think Halloween 6 does the best job at nailing the fall feel in the actual movie. Halloween 4, of course, has a perfect intro, but after those establishing shots, it's all pretty mundane. Halloween 6 actually feels somewhat close to what fall is like in the Midwest, except for the goddamn mountain in the background. This is when we're introduced to the new Strode family. It's kind of confusing, but in a weird callback to the original film, it turns out that Laurie's adoptive parents have spent the last 17 years or so trying to sell the Myers house, and eventually they're able to sell it to Laurie's uncle. It's not even really clear how long they've lived there, but it looks like they moved in pretty recently at the beginning of the movie. Cara's dad is a complete prick, so they actually have someone you want to see die later on, and after getting in a fight with him, Cara heads to school and sends Danny on his way. Man, what a fucking creep. Tommy finds Jamie's baby at the bus station and brings it to his house. There's this weird shot of the baby crying in the background while Tommy's mom walks past his door vacantly, and I guess it was supposed to be funny, like he's so fucking weird that she's just given up on him. I don't know though, it's just really bizarre. Dr. Loomis shows up at the Strode's house and fills Cara's mom in on the whole history of Michael Myers and how she lives in the house he grew up in. She smartly decides to take her kids and go, but not before Michael shows up to kill her with a weirdly small axe. After that, we finally get the explanation on what the thorn symbol that showed up in Halloween 5 actually means, and why the cult kidnapped Jamie and released Michael at the end of Halloween 5. The thorn is tied to a constellation that appears randomly on certain Halloween nights, and on those nights it would choose a child to inflict with the curse that caused Michael to become an unstoppable killing machine, and then the curse would only subside if the cursed child killed their entire bloodline. It's a weird way to retroactively explain why Michael went dormant after Halloween 2, and I guess it means the thorn constellation aligned 2 years in a row in 1988 and 1989. He also explains away the fact that the Strodes aren't part of Michael's bloodline by saying that because they live in his house, he considers them to be part of his family, and that's why he's killing them. Jesus, could they put in any less effort? After that, there's a lot of meandering bullshit used to pad out the movie's runtime, but eventually Tommy, Danny, Dr. Loomis, Cara, and the baby all end up at Tommy's house, and this is where things start to get really messy. It's revealed that the entire time the man in black was actually Dr. Wynn. Cara tries to run away, but the cult catches up to her, so she jumps out the second-story window and falls unconscious. At this point, the cult has Dr. Loomis, Tommy, Danny, Cara, and the baby, but for some reason they just let Tommy and Dr. Loomis go, as if Dr. Loomis wouldn't know to immediately go to Smith's Grove. And the baby. Let's talk about the baby. So while we know it's Jamie's son, which makes him Michael's great nephew, we never find out who the father is until the final sequence. And the father of the baby is none other than Michael fucking Myers. Now this is disgusting and stupid for a myriad of reasons, the first being that the writing department thought and decided it was okay to make Michael rape his 15-year-old niece. That goes without saying. But just a few minutes earlier, we're told that Michael needs to kill his entire bloodline so that the curse will go away. So why would he produce another family member in his bloodline? Why wouldn't he just kill Jamie and finally be done with it when he had the chance at the beginning of the movie? It seems like for a second this was the idea they were going for, because the man in black spends the entire movie courting Danny to become the next Michael. It would have been so much smarter to remove the baby from the equation entirely and just have Jamie escape the cult that's been holding her captive so that Michael could go after her, and they could have made the secondary goal protecting Danny from having the thorn curse transferred to him. Unquestionably though, the stupidest decision in Halloween 6 is how Michael is taken out. Tommy makes a circle of rocks, baits Michael into it, says Samhain wrong, and that stops Michael in his tracks. That's it. That's all it took to stop Michael Myers. All of the main characters escape, but Dr. Loomis stays behind, discovers that it was actually Dr. Wynn under the mask, and suddenly the thorn symbol shows up on his wrist. We cut to Michael dressed up as the man in black walking out of Smith's Grove, and Loomis screams as the movie fades to a jack-o'-lantern blowing out. The scream is actually the one I use in my podcast Fear Frequency for the Halloween alerts. The studio showed this version of the movie at a test screening and held a Q&A after, where they got absolutely reamed by the audience for how bad the movie was, specifically how bad the ending was. It was then sent back for major reshoots, but of course there were a whole slew of new problems that cropped up with that. While filming the original cut of Halloween 6, Donald Pleasance's health began to fail, and unfortunately he passed away before the reshoots even took place. One of the major differences in the two cuts is that the original one features way more scenes with Dr. Loomis than Michael Myers, and the theatrical version features way more scenes with Michael Myers, and Loomis is cut almost entirely from the movie. A lot of the scenes that were added increased the brutality factor on Michael's end, which I like because the plot is so disjointed and boring that getting to see some great practical kills ups the excitement a lot in my opinion. The confrontation between Michael and Jamie is altered so that she's killed at the beginning of the movie, which was another smart move. That's because her dream sequence halfway through the original cut doesn't serve any purpose, and she ends up taking a bullet to the brain anyway. The death scene of Cara's dad was also extended, and it features a full-on head explosion while he's being electrocuted, and I'm not gonna lie, the effects work on display there is incredible. Finally, we get to see Michael go on an absolute rampage through Smith's Grove in the last sequence, and that's much, much better than the rock circle that stops him in the original cut. The only aspects I find worse in the theatrical version are obviously that there's so much less Dr. Loomis, and the fact that Tommy is able to take Michael down by beating him with a lead pipe. We still get an ending that's left a bit open, but it's way less of a sequel tease than the ending in the original cut. No matter which one you see though, I personally don't think you're getting a good movie either way. When watching the three movies in the Thorn trilogy back to back, it gets harder to ignore the feeling that before anything else, the main reason Michael was brought back in the first place was that so he could make some money for people, and that sucks. It feels like they didn't expect to do as well as they did with Halloween 4, and instead of injecting some care and craftsmanship into Halloween 5 and 6, they panicked, and Halloween 6 is what happened when all of that rushing and laziness caught up to them. And the shitty icing on the garbage cake is that this was the last time we'd ever see Donald Pleasance in one of these movies. I wish I could say they learned their lesson, but if and when I take a look look at H20 and Halloween Resurrection, we'll find out whether or not that's the case. Well guys, we finally made it to the end of the Thorn trilogy, and I gotta say this was the hardest and most rewarding series of videos I've ever worked on, and I'm excited to continue with the rest of the Halloween franchise. I just wanted to thank you guys for coming around and watching these videos because that's what makes it all worth it for me. And if you really want to help me out, again, the biggest thing you can do is subscribe if you're not already and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one of my uploads. But of course, I'd love to hear from you what you think of Halloween 6 and the rest of the Thorn trilogy down in the comments below. But that's all the time I have for today though, guys. So as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.